Welcome back to On the Flip Side. So, today we're going to be going over an album that I have a big soft spot for. If you know me personally, you would know that I am a huge fan of Megadeth, to the point where it's a lot. But anyway, today we're going to be going over one of my favorite albums of theirs, one that I think is particularly underrated. An album that for them is still as much of a classic as Rust in Peace or Peace Sells. We're going to be going over So Far So Good, So What. Despite the fact that I own the vinyl record of this, I'm going to be doing our review today on a cassette, as my speaker setup is actually quite loud, and I feel like this is a album that you want to listen to at volume. And the bass has a tendency to shake the turntable a bit because it's a bit of a sensitive piece of equipment. As you may notice, we're no longer in the bedroom in front of the bookshelves. We are actually out in the front room in front of the actual setup. Got a new intro as well. There's going to be a few more changes coming to the channel as well here soon. I look forward to showing you all those as well. But for right now, we're going to go into the review of Megadeth's So Far So Good, So What. We'll see you on the flip side. Coming off at number 1, the first track on the album is Into the Lungs of Hell. It's a great instrumental intro track that really starts off the album with just ripping guitar solos, and it's something that Megadeth doesn't actually really do on many of their records. That is an instrumental portion of their album leading into the rest. You'll notice that Into the Lungs of Hell is going to be the only instrumental intro track they use until 2009's Endgame with Dialectic Chaos Into This Day We Fight. Something I feel they should probably use a little more, because this track in this format is really, really nice. It sets the tempo and the pace of the album really well. I love this track, and I love how it sort of blends into the next track, Set the World Afire, which is another absolute banger and classic. Set the World Afire being one of Megadeth's early tracks that actually was initially itself called Megadeth before deciding that would be the name of the band. I believe that was a track that Dave Mustaine wrote after being booted out of Metallica, and he might have had some of it written prior as well, but you can actually find a bootleg online called Burnt Offerings of a really early Megadeth show, I think in 1985 or 1986, that had a lot of sort of proto versions of the songs that would end up on this record and would end up on later records as well, and Set the World Afire is one of them, and on that they did call it Burnt Offerings. Set the World Afire is a really great classic thrash style riffage. You know, you have the amazing bridge sections with the vocals that are just, I mean, Dave Mustaine on this album is in like full heroin binge, so you can really tell that the delivery of everything is just snarling and biting. There's a level of aggression that, I mean, Rust in Peace is really, really refined and precise, whereas I feel So Far So Good, So What is really Dave Mustaine as if he was a rabid dog being unleashed onto an unsuspecting pack of like bystanders. Just really animalistic stuff on this record. After Set the World Afire, you have Anarchy in the UK, a Sex Pistols cover. Pretty great cover. It has a pretty decent music video as well. Aired on MTV quite a bit. Overall, I mean, the track is a little bit weaker. Dave Mustaine is also pretty notoriously well known for having messed up the vocals on this cover, but I mean, it doesn't really hurt the song. The song in and of itself is actually quite good as far as covers go, even with the kind of spit out, you know, incoherent vocals in a few places, but I mean, it really ups the level of intensity that Anarchy in the UK already has, especially having the thrash genre thrown on top of that punk. You can almost argue that this is in itself a crossover song, despite the fact that this isn't like a DRI album or something. After Anarchy in the UK, you get, in my opinion, one of the best tracks on the record. You have Mary Jane. I think the sort of staccato guitar tracks and the looping effects on this one are really, really well done. And despite the fact that these guys must have been absolutely obliterated in the studio, this track is incredibly tastefully put together. You know, it's kind of like a held back, almost like black magic ritual or some kind of thing that's just been compressed to tape. Like, these guys are really going off on this song here, and the whole breakdown into chorus, into solo, is one of the wildest transitions I think Megadeth has in their entire discography. I think if you have overlooked So Far So Good, So What, the best track here that you might not have already listened to is definitely going to be Mary Jane. So that leaves the first side of the record done. We're going to listen to side 2, and we'll come back here in just a moment, and we'll see you on the flip side. Alright, we're back with side 2 of the cassette. We are on to 502. Really great song about drunk driving. One of, I'd say, their weaker songs in the lyrics department, just because it kind of falls into the 80s goofiness. While, I mean, it's still good. You kind of can't really beat this era of Megadeth's rhythm section. I mean, it's not the Rust in Peace lineup where you have, you know, like David Ellefson playing off of the drums and vice versa, but so, instrumentally speaking, on this record, you have an excellent blend of this sort of jazz fusion that was reminiscent in the first 2 records, while having a couple of new band members. You have Chuck Baylor and Jeff Young, both on rhythm guitar and drums, respectfully. But they are excellent players, and honestly, I kind of would have liked to have seen another record with these two, because the playing on this record is so goddamn ferocious. And you know, you gotta love Marty Friedman and Nick Menza, but I think I yearn to know what the next Megadeth record after So Far So Good So What would have looked like had Jeff Young and Chuck Baylor stuck around, because God, it would be anything but boring. So you have 502. Great song about drunk driving. The lyrics are a little bit weak. Overall, just the mix on the bass, you have this sort of breakdown in the middle of the song, which kind of is a little, it kind of comes out of nowhere, but at the same time it still fits, of like a car crash, and then a huge wave of bass comes through the speakers and then breaks down into Dave Mustaine, you know, delivering some lines, and then into a guitar solo. I'd say so far, 502 is going to probably be the weakest point on the album up until this point. But that's okay, because the next track is In My Darkest Hour, which, I mean, still remains on Megadeth set lists till this day. Amazing song. If you don't know the story already, Dave Mustaine got the news that Cliff Burton from Metallica had died, sat down and wrote the instrumentals and lyrics to this song all in one sitting, while being incredibly depressed over that whole situation. But overall, it's a song that really stands the test of time. The lyrics are not about Cliff Burton. They're about one of Dave Mustaine's ex-girlfriends, but that is kind of a tendency towards a lot of the earlier Megadeth catalog, especially with like Last Rites, Love to Death, and like Wake Up Dead, or even Trust later on. Those lyrics are directly inspired by a girlfriend, but the grief felt while writing the song definitely came from the death of Cliff Burton. So, you know, tragic story there, but an amazing song. Easily one of the best tracks in their entire discography, and probably one of the reasons that this album is not left by the wayside entirely for a lot of people. Like I said, I still love this record through and through. Next track we got on the record is Liar. I think at this point in the record, you have one of their strongest songs in Megadeth's discography, followed up by a very fun, thrashy track, which kind of just has, you know, weak lyrics, I think. I think Liar overall, I mean, the point behind the song is really simple. It's like, you're a goddamn liar, and like, but it just doesn't, I don't think it lands as well as it could overall. But once again, that's okay, because you get a somewhat weak track into an incredibly strong album closer, Hook and Mouth. A great song, a great anti-PMRC song, because that was kind of the tone of the time when this album was recorded. But overall, Hook and Mouth has definitely one of their best choruses, period. Some of the highest energy guitar playing and rhythm arrangements in their entire discography. But Hook and Mouth is absolutely amazing. I've noticed that Megadeth, as opposed to a lot of other bands, really takes good focus on an amazing album opener and an incredibly strong album closer. I mean, you can see this on Rust in Peace with Holy Wars and Rust in Peace. You can see this on Countdown to Extinction with Skin of My Teeth and Ashes in Your Mouth, Euthanasia. I mean, all of these records have really strong album closers and really strong openers. And I think that really works in their favor here, because the immediate memory I have of these albums are those bookends, really, and they are so goddamn good. Overall, thoughts on the album for me, I'd say, now that we're done with all of the tracks, I'd say the best tracks on here are definitely going to be Mary Jane, In My Darkest Hour, and Hook and Mouth. So if you haven't given this record a listen, you should absolutely listen to it and check out those tracks specifically. As for the rest of the tracks on the album, They're all really good. The only weak point on this record that I've ever had is with Liar. Really, I can absolutely stand 502. It's a good track. Liar, I mean, is listenable. I usually end up tuning it out until Hook and Mouth comes on. But overall, I think that this album, while being wedged right in between two of the most iconic albums of their entire discography, is absolutely not one that you should ever pass up. That should be about it. Thank you so much for watching. Just wanted to let y'all know the MoFi Sound Labs upload I did last week. The more I'm looking at it, the more I'm thinking that I might revisit that topic at some point, because I kind of went into that not as prepared as I would have liked. I think for now I'm going to let it lie, but at some point I'm definitely going to go back and revisit the MoFi stuff, because it's really fascinating, and I don't think my coverage of it did justice. I think it kind of just explained enough for you to know what the heck was going on, but I'm still probably going to go back to that and revisit it. So if you were mad about how that came across, which I haven't gotten any bad comments on it yet, but I mean, I suspect they're coming at some point. I am going to revisit that at some point soon. Well, maybe not soon. Maybe when I get a little bit better essay writing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching again, and we'll see you on the flip side, y'all.